I recently lost a friend to depression, and it hit me really hard. So even though we're more open to discussing mental health compared to, say, 10 years ago, there continues to be some misperceptions and stigma that might prevent people from fostering an open dialogue and seeking help. So I'm replaying an interview that I had with Dr. Don Mordecai, Kaiser Permanente's national leader for mental health and wellness, about their mental health awareness effort called Find Your Words. There's been a lot of talk about depression recently and the issues surrounding mental health. What are some of the signs and symptoms?
Yeah, the most prominent signs of depression are, of course, depressed or low mood, and then loss of interest in things that usually people find pleasurable or interesting. Of course, there are several other symptoms like poor concentration, loss of appetite or increased appetite, sleep problems, things like that. And then sometimes people even get to the point where they feel like life isn't worth living anymore.
When you talk about feeling depressed and low mood, what sets depression apart from, I'm just feeling blue?
Yeah, that's a great question and one that's very important. So it's normal human experience to feel down sometimes. It may last even for a day or more, but depression is really persistent low mood along with some of those other symptoms that I talked about, so that most every day, most days of a week, for several weeks at a time, you're getting into that space of feeling really low. That's what we call a depressive episode. And feeling blue happens, but depression is something that needs to be addressed.
For someone who's suffering from depression, does it or could it become what they consider their normal and therefore they might not know whether or not they're depressed?
That's a great question, Audrey, and that does sometimes happen. I mean, I work with people in my practice who have lost touch with what normal feels like, and sometimes we talk about that when they can feel better, because treatment works and there is hope to feel better. Then they have to readjust that experience of, well, what's a normal low mood versus, oh, my depression's coming back and I need to, contact Dr. Mordecai to talk about that. So, renormalizing and reacquainting yourself with your non-depressed self is an important part of recovery.
Well, as you know, a lot of people are often reluctant to talk about depression or any other mental health issues that they might have. How do you start that conversation with a loved one or friend?
Yeah, unfortunately, these conditions are really common, right? Every year, between 1 in 4 and 1 in 5 Americans will suffer with some kind of mental health condition. And yet, as a society, we're largely silent about this. And we feel strongly that that's a sign of stigma. And so with Find Your Words and our website, findyourwords.org, we're really trying to help people engage with each other and have a conversation about these issues. So on the website you can find resources for how do you start a conversation with somebody that you think may be suffering with depression? What can you say to get that conversation going? How do I listen without judgment to help people feel comfortable bringing this forward?
And people could hesitate to bring it up because they might feel as though they're intruding on someone's personal space or thoughts, right?
Right. People can feel like, oh, that's too private. I don't want to get into that. And yet, we did a national poll where most people feel like they want to help, and that most people feel like we're getting more open in our society. And I can tell you, among younger generations, I hear more discussion of this, more normalizing of it. But there's still a lot of silence and stigma that we can break through. And I think that will really help a lot more people get the help they need.
So why the stigma? Is it because it's the brain? I mean, we talk about every other illness out there very openly, and people can actively seek treatment for what ails them, but it doesn't seem that that's necessarily so if it's a mental health issue.
Yeah, well, that's a great question. I think mental health conditions are somehow about you as a person, whereas if you have an injured leg, it's about your leg. And so if there's something wrong with you, that is a stigmatizing sort of situation, right? You're going to keep silent about that or feel embarrassed about that. And really that's what we have to get through. I think if it helps people to think, well, just like I have a broken leg, my brain has a problem right now that it needs help to get through. Maybe that would help. But we have to get past that sort of shame. And unfortunately, the poll we did, more than half of people felt that depression was somehow linked to some kind of personal failing. And that's that old stigmatized attitude that we have to get past.
Well, there's another attitude that some people have. Some people believe that you can just make it all go away by thinking happy thoughts to feel better.
Yeah, just pick yourself up by the bootstraps, snap out of it, those kinds of things. Again, that's stigmatizing language that is more likely to make people feel that they're somehow at fault or bad about themselves than to help them seek help. So we really encourage people to say, hey, I care about you, I'm worried. Is there something you want to talk to me about? So you're opening a conversation rather than closing one.
Well, I understand there are a lot of different treatments for depression and or mental health conditions. What are some of the most common? And does it always have to come down to some sort of antidepressant?
Well, so that there are many different approaches that can work. It's important that people find what works for them. The most common ones are forms of talk therapy like cognitive behavioral therapy, medication management with antidepressants. Some people find that if they rigorously adhere to vigorous exercise program or proper nutrition, meditation, putting the right package of treatments together for you as an individual and finding what works is really the most important approach.
And that's really the point of our conversation today. If you're feeling down for any reason whatsoever and you think you need help, reach out to your healthcare provider and get help because it's really important. You have a Find Your Words campaign in partnership with StoryCorps. Tell us about that.
Right. So the Find Your Words campaign is our initiative to start this conversation and make it safe in our society to have this conversation. There is a spot that shows two friends texting each other, and as it goes down, you realize that one of the friends is quite depressed, and it leaves the other friend with the sort of ... not knowing quite what to say, and then we say, go to findyourwords.org to determine what you want to say in this kind of situation. The StoryCorps piece is an oral history project where we are gathering stories about people who have connected with friends and loved ones about their mental health conditions. You can see one of those stories now on findyourwords.org. And we encourage people to go and engage with the resources we put up there to have these conversations and really break the silence.
So there is a way, but it's also important to know that you're not alone.
Yes.
Findyourwords.org. So guys, find your words if you need help. Dr. Mordecai, I want to thank you so very much for joining me on the show today.
Thank you, Audrey. Appreciate your time.
And that's it for this week's show. I'm Audrey Adams. Join me here next week for more insightful, intelligent, and inspiring conversations and information on Talk with Audrey. It's all about improving the quality of your life. I'll see you next week.